Alright, so let's get right to it. This is probably the section people actually really want me to get into and honestly talk about, because it is the most controversial aspect of the film, which is the way Rian is writing Luke and filming him and all its glory or lack thereof, and how could people who possibly consider themselves Star Wars fans agree in any way, shape, or form that what the Luke that they're seeing is nothing short of character assassination. But again, I am doing primarily response to Mauler, so I'm going to be perhaps trailing off a little bit because I don't want to do what he does, is imputing criticisms to people or mind reading or leaping to conclusions. So I'm going to go through it just straightforwardly from his quotations and his criticisms of the first time we see Luke. And of course, let's not put it off. The immediate problem is him tossing the lightsaber, but I just want to quote him in terms of what he thought was wrong with the scene. So he asks, why was Luke standing there? Why is he already angry? Why did he comically throw the lightsaber? Well, let me get to the dessert first. The lightsaber toss is kind of a visual callback to Luke tossing the lightsaber in Return of the Jedi. I know people will say, okay, yes, he did that in Return of the Jedi. It's a different context. It doesn't make sense to use that in the way Rian is doing it. But the point is, it's not just happening for a comedy. It's a callback to the earlier film. So it's there for a reason. He's not just doing it. As for these other questions, why was Luke standing there? I don't know what the question even means. Do you mean he should be sleeping? He should be flying? His positioning was weird? I don't know. He just asked that question that was strange. He says, why is he already so angry? I don't think Luke is angry. He's not happy to see Rey, but I don't think he is angry. You could be not happy and still not be angry. He does this a lot where he supposes, well, if you're not angry, you're happy. And if you're happy, you're not angry. No, you can have a range of attitudes. So I don't quite get it. But this is the main charge, which he says, quote unquote, Luke is different. This is not classical Luke. This is not my Luke. Therefore, something is wrong. But I will agree with him immediately. If people think I'm just here to bash him or find areas of disagreement, when Rey talks for Chewie, when they chase after him in the hut, and Rey translates for Chewie, I agree with him. That's very insulting. I agree that was very weird. That didn't make any sense. I didn't quite know if that was comedy or drama, but definitely Rey translating for Chewie was a very strange moment and did feel insulting. I will agree with that. Furthermore, I do agree that the whole positioning of Rey, because she's relaying the news that Han is dead and Luke is not around Leia, so the way he would react to that kind of grief seems strange because he doesn't know Rey. Rey has just shown up for 5 minutes, so what is he supposed to feel? So that I agree that there's a weird parallel between Rey and Luke talking about Han. But I will correct him on one thing, that Rian did in fact shoot a morning scene with Luke. It's not long, it's only 15 seconds, but he did film it, but he cut it out. Now, I agree that the fact that he included the porgs, but he cut Luke mourning does show a failure of judgment. I don't think that was the right decision. It's still a legitimate choice. I don't think he hates Star Wars because he did that. But yeah, it's definitely strange that he didn't put that back in. And then he goes into, and I just include this because this will matter later in terms of Luke, about the scene between Snoke and Kylo, which I'm going to do on its own, but I just want to do a little snippet that he brings up that, Snoke is insulting Kylo, and this is Mauler's word. Snoke shares he is no longer confident is the Sith he saw in him long ago. Well, again, and this is a common mistake, just not his. Kylo is not a Sith. Snoke is not a Sith. Now, what is a Sith is itself very difficult and very hard to understand, and I'm not going to attack Mauler too much because this is a common confusion even among experts on this. But there are some telltale signs. You have to have yellow eyes, your face is deformed, you have dark side powers like using lightning, and so on and so forth. As far as I know, Kylo has none of these abilities. He has none of these physical marks, so why does he think he's a Sith at all? I don't understand. And this thing has been on for 2 years. He has not put it down and reloaded it to re-edit it. So he honestly thinks Kylo is a Sith. Now, if you think you're a Star Wars expert, or are lecturing people or criticizing people, and you don't know this basic fact about Kylo, that he is not a Sith Lord, then I have to submit that you are not qualified to be a serious critic of either Star Wars films or Star Wars. So I can accept what he does a lot as good parody and humor. I think his Game of Thrones videos are very strong in that. He does really call out very well Benioff and Weiss, but his film critic stuff with Star Wars is pretty weak, as I'm going to show with this strange quotation that he thinks is very troublesome. So Rey and Luke are talking, and he just cuts it off and says, "Wait, you think I came here to the most unfindable place in the galaxy for no reason at all?" Now, he cites this line word for word and says, "This doesn't make any sense. Sounds like a child wrote it." Now, I looked this up. Grammatically, it's just fine. Luke saying unfindable is fine. But he's like, no. These are better sentences than that. I'm like, what is wrong with those sentences? Why would you pick out, of all the things that people are arguing about, Holdo, Canto Bite, Luke tossing the lightsaber, people are not discussing unfindable in that sentence. But he's like, this is the one thing you're going to pull out as a quote to be like, this just shows us the sheer idiocy of Rian Johnson. I'm like, huh? Unfindable place? I don't get quite what he's saying. But here's the granddaddy of these kinds of errors, because later on, he says a little bit later, when Rey and Luke try to train, that, she goes too far to the dark side. He pulls her back, and, Rey says, "You closed yourself off from the Force." And Mauler says, "I have no idea what this means." Now, let me quote that again. I have no idea what this means. So let me explain it very quickly. When you use your Force power, you become visible to other Force users. Now, this is actually a big controversy and big problem, because Palpatine uses Force power, so how is he invisible to the Jedi? Well, it doesn't make you literally invisible. But what it does do is it signals you're around, but it doesn't give you a precise location. So that's why Yoda, when he's in Palpatine's office, can sense the dark side, but doesn't know it's Palpatine. Because again, once you use Force powers, yes, other Force users can kind of sense you, but they don't have a precise idea of where you are or who you are. So that's what she means, that he's so totally cut off from the Force that other Force users are not aware of him. That's presumably why Leia couldn't find him. So this is actually very basic knowledge of the Force, but apparently Mauler doesn't know it. He may have used that line in parody. Maybe he's just being ironic, but I don't think so. He says, "I have no idea what this means," which means you don't know the first basic rules of the Force, how it's utilized. If you don't know the basics of the Force, why are you criticizing the movie? Because he goes back this over and over and over. Obsessively. Like, this person doesn't know the Force. Rey's not training. She didn't go take up, but where's Yoda to train? Like, what are you talking about? You don't even know how Force users can sense one another? Why are you doing this essay? Like, at least try to read a little bit of research before you do this, you idiot. But let me close off with a barrage of obvious powerful criticism, because I have not questioned even his interpretation of Luke, but if you do real research on this, every single point he makes no sense. So, for instance, okay, Luke is very disillusioned. He's not very the classical noble hero. Well, guess what? Lucas had the idea in his episode 7 that Luke would not be this cheerful, optimistic hero. He would be very disillusioned. So again, Lucas thought this is a possible interpretation of Luke, so there you go. Second of all, he brings up a lot. Luke saved Vader, Luke saved his father, even though Vader was the original idea for Empire was that Anakin Skywalker and Vader and Anakin would be two different people. Again, that's right. That the original idea was that Anakin Skywalker and Vader are two different people. They're not the same. So Lucas changed his mind. He went back. There was other things too. For instance, he didn't lose his hand. Leia was not his sister, etc., etc. But basically, in terms of what's relevant, Vader is not Luke's father. That was never in the original character. So when we see Star Wars 1977, if we consider that character canon, he's not this guy who's obsessed with family or obsessed with his father. And Vader is not his father. So, right again, this is a completely irrelevant, illegitimate point because you're referring to a retcon, essentially referring to a myth. Saying Luke would never do this, Luke would never do that, Luke saved it. That's all a retcon, which Lucas did, which is fine that you think this is real. A lot of people think this is real, but it's a complete myth. So just on a factual basis, you're wrong. So let me just finish off because Ryan has this recent controversial quote, and I think this is very relevant in terms of what he thinks about world building. He puts less value on it. He wants to concentrate on making his film, making a good story for 2 hours. Now, I think for somebody who's defending The Last Jedi, this quote has to be done carefully, because Rian has said over and over again he loves Star Wars, he loves a lot of the classical stuff, but clearly he wants to have a more auteur interpretation of Star Wars. I don't think it works all the time. Again, I'm going to say this over and over again. I give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very great film, but I think it's very flawed. I do think there's a lot of things that could be questioned, just like the Han scene. He should definitely have put in the morning. He should have cut some of the porgs, concentrated a little bit more on Luke and Leia. But again, it's his film. I'm just judging the film he made, not the one I want to make. I will do videos on where I think the story could be improved and the plot could be improved. But again, the basic major charges that this is not Luke or this is character assassination don't hold up. This is admittedly a weird version of Luke, but it is a possible interpretation of Luke. So this is the opening salvo. I'm sure we're going to be getting into this more and more and more, because this is a major controversy among fans and even experts about whether this Luke is a legitimate version of the Luke we know and that we care about. And I'm very well aware that Mark himself does not like this version, does not like Rian, does not like JJ. I'm just judging the film. But I definitely do feel sorry that Mark feels the way he does. I do feel for him, because he was clearly not treated very well with these films. So I think we want to be aware of both things. As much as I'm praising Disney for making this film, we should not forget that Mark clearly has a lot of mixed feelings about The Last Jedi. And in no way I'm suppressing the knowledge of that. So I'm just want to be very clear. I'm judging the film and what the film means. Not what Rian thinks about it, not what Mauler thinks about it, but what the film is unto itself, and if these criticisms are legitimate. Okay, this has been Star Wars Analyzed on the issue of Luke and Mauler, or Rian versus Luke, or Rian versus Mark Hamill. And we'll be doing a lot more, but this is the beginning of this issue. So once again, Star Wars Analyzed. If you like the content, please like or subscribe. Thank you for listening.